Hello there. We're going to get started in just a moment as folks trickle in from the waiting room in Zoom. All right, looks like we've stabilized a bit. I'm sure folks will continue to come in. Good afternoon and Happy New Year. My name is Ted Wells. I'm the president of STEM Connector, and it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you to our first webinar of 2024. And I'm going to simply introduce our host and a mentor of mine in honor of Mentoring Month, Sheila Boynton. Sheila has been involved with STEM Connector and Million Women Mentors since our earliest days, and has really been somebody who's been transformational for me in my growth as a leader in this space. So Sheila is the co-founder of Thinking Media, which is a Chattanooga-based educational technology firm for the past 23 years. And Thinking Media is maybe better known for its signature product, Learning Blade, which is an interactive system of online lessons and activities for students really across the educational spectrum that helps them prepare for STEM careers and gain interest in STEM careers. She's developed statewide licenses across a variety of different markets, and it's been a real success story. She, prior to that, Thinking Media created a product called KeyTrain that was acquired by ACT and has been hailed as really the most effective system for preparation for ACT assessments and basic skills, and is still used very much to this day. And when I met Sheila, she was just exiting that company. So Sheila and her husband Dane are consummate entrepreneurs and are always on doing something interesting. One of her primary activities in a variety of capacities working with us has been to engage as national states chair for the Million Women Mentors movement. Really joining right since Sheila, the kickoff in 2014. She has recruited state chairs as well as volunteer steering committees that really have done the work that make Million Women Mentors go. She is on a variety of different initiatives as a volunteer. And Sheila, I'll let us focus on the panel rather than going through all of them. Needless to say, you are very, very busy, and she's a proud mother of two amazing young women and a soon-to-be grandmother. So I'm pleased to call Sheila not only a dear friend and colleague, but also in honor of Mentoring Month, my mentor as well. So Sheila, I'll hand it over to you, and I know you have a great group today, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Ted. And it's great to be a mentor when you have great mentees like Ted. Ted equally has been a leader that has really made STEM Connector what it is today. And I know we are all very appreciative of you. As Ted mentioned, it is National Mentoring Month. And every year when it's National Mentoring Month, it's a really great opportunity for us to slow down and think a little bit about, what are the impacts that we've had or we want to have with our mentors, with our mentees, et cetera. And, many of us have mentors that we don't even recognize are mentors. These are people that pour themselves into your life and help you to be better who you are. And, I'm particularly excited today that we have an amazing, two amazing women that I think you are going to be so inspired by, because it is really a great opportunity to get to hear from them. I think we went to the slide, but I'm just quickly going to say Million Women Mentors was founded to be really the network, and grew into this network dedicated to encouraging women and girls to pursue, persist, and succeed in STEM careers. And Million Mentors CEO now, Jo Weber, is a wonderful STEM woman herself. And so just definitely want to give her a shout out as well on this call, because it takes all ships to make us move forward. And as Ted mentioned, I have been an ed tech, but I am an engineer by training, graduated in engineering school a long time ago, but very much have worn that badge of honor for many years, and just really excited to be part of a group that helps to elevate and move girls and women towards STEM and computer science and CTE careers for our country. As I mentioned, we can go to the next screen. We do have some amazing women with us today. And Dr. Lisa Hinkelman, I think you guys are going to love hearing from her. Every time we hear her, I get chills and things because Lisa wears many hats. She's an educator, a counselor, a researcher, an author. She's done amazing work, but her work has really been focused on researching girls and educating adults about the importance of women or girls and how we are really bringing our girls up. And she has a national girl serving nonprofit that is based in Ohio but spread throughout the country called Ruling Our Experiences, ROCKS. And she's going to talk a little bit about that today. And I think you're going to be inspired by the research work that she has done and what she can share with us. Just adding to that and really getting us excited is we have Dr. Mekka Smith, who is actually with the Department of Education, our federal Department of Education. And it's very exciting when we see the department. This is the first time I think the department has done this, actually really focus in on STEM. And the You Belong in STEM work that Mekka helps to lead is one of those such initiatives where, they're really dialing in on this to give educators a real way to actually help individuals in education be more intentional about how they follow STEM. And so we're going to hear from her. She equally is a rock star in this area. And you're going to hear a little bit about our national partnership for student success that everybody on the call should be staying tuned all the way till the end so you can hear how you can get involved. But she has written a lot of papers and documents, et cetera, and been at Harvard, just really been a real leader in this space and worked with Kip prior to joining the department. So I know we're very, very excited to hear from them. Just a couple of logistics things real quick. If you have any questions that you want to ask, obviously this is a national webinar, so we don't have your mics off, but feel free to go ahead and put those questions in the Q&A section, and we will be sure to get to them. I see people already doing this. We've got people from all over the country. Please introduce yourself in the chat. I think you are doing that, and it's great if you can put your name, what organization you're with, and what state you come from. So if there are others that are from your state, be happy to have you. And just again, welcome, and Happy New Year, as Ted said. We're going to start off today talking to Lisa first. So Kylie, if we can switch over to Lisa and myself, that'll be great, highlighted. Just really, Lisa, thank you so much again for being with us and for what you're doing. Can you just give us a little overview of your nonprofit, talk a little bit about your focus and why you chose addressing challenges of girls in education?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. But the nonprofit that I founded and operate, Ruling Our Experiences, really started out as a research study. I was a professor at Ohio State in counseling, and so I was working in schools primarily, but also in community mental health a bit. And my target was youth and primarily working with girls. And what I saw very early on is that the challenges that face girls are complex. They're related. There's intersections between and among them. The drops in confidence, the tumultuous relationships, the questioning their own leadership and abilities, all of that starts for girls really early, but then without intervention on the trajectory, it impacts who those girls become as grown-ups.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, we could do something about this earlier. Like, we don't have to wait until girls are grown-up girls with confidence challenges or leadership challenges. We could get to them younger. And so started that work in 3 Columbus City schools, and have continued to grow and scale it. And the gist of what we do in a nutshell is we train and license female counselors, school counselors, social workers, and educators to deliver a 20-week evidence-based program in schools for girls that focuses on confidence and relationship navigation and setting boundaries and standing up for yourself and finding your leadership voice and um, planning for your academic and career and leadership journeys in a way where you're no way restricted by the societal messages that might be coming your way about what you should look like, what you should act like, what you should be good at, what you should study, all of that. And at this point, we've got ROCK's programs operating about 500 programs across 30 states. And then the second thing that we do is operate an Institute for Research and Training, where we conduct large-scale national research with girls in grades 5 through 12, and then use that research to help educate and support the adults who are impacting and influencing girls' lives, from teachers to parents to mentors to sports coaches. We think that anybody who's got a touch point in a girl's life can learn from the research and do that work even better.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, that's so important because I think we already know some of the effects of what, people have been through and how you're doing that. Can you talk a little bit about how you identify and sort of assess those challenges that you're trying to address when girls are facing those challenges in education, and specifically, obviously this is a STEM conversation,
Yeah.
when they're in their STEM courses?
Yeah, so we did our first large scale survey called the Girls Index in 2017. And that helped us establish some baseline data about what girls' thoughts, perceptions, beliefs, and attitudes were between 5th and 12th grade. And we surveyed just under 11,000 girls across the country. We just replicated that research in 2023 and surveyed over 17,000 girls. And we look not just at their levels of confidence, but we're also looking at some very STEM specific kinds of questions. We actually produced a Girls in STEM report that came out in 2018. We'll have another one that's coming out in 2024 with this brand new data. And I'll share the links to these resources in the chat when we're finished. But what we're looking at is what's happening for girls personally, academically, socially, and emotionally that is impacting their perceptions of their abilities in STEM courses, in STEM careers, in leadership opportunities. And how can we actually be getting to girls earlier so that we can shift this trajectory? Because what we find and what the research is showing is a significant drop in confidence between 5th and 9th grade that doesn't rebound. And then we're also simultaneously seeing girls' perceptions of their abilities, particularly in courses such as math and science, declining at those same times. But what we also saw in the last round of research, that while their perceptions of their abilities were declining, their interest in STEM was increasing. So it's interesting that we didn't hone in on like, oh, well, girls just aren't interested anymore after 8th
Mhm,
grade, which is kind of the tale we hear a lot. It
mhm.
was their interest was increasing, but their perceptions of their abilities to do the courses or the job was where that intersection requires a lot of attention, I believe, to be paid.
And that is so true, even with Learning Blade, and honestly, I am a STEM woman, as I mentioned, that what we saw, and I always like to say this, you can't be what you can't see, right? And so I think where they might have the interest, they don't have a knowledge of what are the broad range of careers that are out there, which is why we created Learning Blade, exactly for the age group you're talking about, 5th through 9th grade, where that is when they're dropping off. One thing that also AEW did a lot of research also that showed that girls, want career paths where they're helping people. And a lot of times we aren't showing them, what does that mean? Like being an engineer, does that really help people, right? So when you think about, how your program and how impact, et cetera, do you have some kind of career piece in there? Like how do we best help girls see their perception of themselves as they get older?
Yeah, no, that's such a good question. We saw a very similar statistic in our last round of research where more than 80% of the girls who responded to our survey, that's 17,502 girls, more than 80% said they want a career where they help others.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we can have an optics problem if girls don't see STEM careers and occupations as helping, right? Because
Exactly.
we tend to think of helping professions as counseling and nursing. And, even though nursing is a STEM field, it's narrowly defined when we think of
Mhm.
helping. And so I think part of the what we have to start to pay attention to is how are we helping girls understand the world of work, but also understand themselves in the process and understand what gets them excited, what makes them feel passionate, what kind of value they want to add to the world,
Yeah.
and where they can actually find joy in work. And I think that we're not doing that all together in the best possible way because we're not helping kids connect the dots that
Mhm.
your job can actually be passionate and joyful and fulfilling and connect to who you are at your core and helping. I mean, if we had a generation of people who found such joy and pleasure in their work where it was such a high level of satisfaction, like what a happier world we would all have the chance to live in. But I think specifically for girls, one of the things we focus on is what do I like? What am I good at? What gets me excited about?
Yeah.
Right. And then trying to have that self exploration along with the exploration and connection with the world of work.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're only doing one of those things of go explore careers, and we're not helping kids understand what values they hold that can match up in that way. At the same
Yeah.
time, I think we could also be doing a better job with the marketing of STEM fields, right? And I don't mean just like make things pink. I mean,
No.
how can we help girls see that there's this whole pathway of all of these careers that might connect so to their core of how they want to help and add value to the world.
Yeah, I mean, I even think back to like, I mean, obviously my own journey, but thinking about also what we're doing for all kids, not just girls and boys, but definitely that today's environment, manufacturing. I think manufacturing still in our head is like a dirty, grimy job. People sort of still align it with that, but manufacturing is very clean, it's high tech, it's very cool. There's a lot of openings in that, and it does help society because we're making things, and I think that's where we're missing that last final piece, like taking kids, what you said, all the way to the finish line to showing them that these type of careers actually help people. And they also relate to the academics that you're learning in school. So kind of tying it all together, right, is what we're about. Share maybe you have some success stories. I'm sure you do. I don't need to ask you that. I know you do. But tell us a little bit about some success stories that you've had where you feel like some of the things that you've done actually are starting to influence policy and making some changes in the way we're kind of thinking about how we are educating our girls.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to connect this back to the point that you just made because I think part of who we want to give access to our program is girls everywhere. I think so often supportive programs or curricula like rocks can get targeted to be like, oh, it's for these girls, or it's for these girls, or these girls need the support, or let's choose these girls. And I think part of what we have to think about is that all girls, and this is what the data is showing, struggle in these ways. And all girls are tending to experience similar kinds of confidence challenges. But when it comes to the access to the occupational choices, we also know that whether you have parents that went to college or didn't, exposes you to a different level of occupational outlook, right? And so I'm a first generation college student. I I had no clue what I was doing when I got to college. I practically failed out. But when you don't have parents who went to college and they don't have any friends who went to college because they tend to hang around people that are like them, you only know occupations, right? Like a doctor and a teacher and a lawyer,
Mhm.
right? And so some of these nuanced and refined career choices just aren't even accessible because you just don't know anybody like
Yeah.
that, and you didn't have the pathway to see that. And I think one of the things that we've had the chance to do in Rocks is we work with girls in the highest needs schools, and we work with girls in the most affluent independent schools. And I think that what we find is that giving them the opportunity to explore and have exposure to women who look like them in a wide variety of careers, who come in as guest speakers and talk to our girls, gives them this sense of like, oh, right? Exactly what you said. I I can be, I've never seen anyone who looks like me doing a job like that.
Mm.
And that gives them hope and a path forward. And at this point, we've had more than 40,000 girls go through our curriculum over the last, nearly 15 years. And just watching and keeping track of that first generation who's going to be the first generation high school graduate, be able to see something better and different for herself, and then be able to go to her college graduation, and then to her wedding, and then to her,
Yeah.
you walk alongside these girls and watch them create different choices and different paths for their future, because I think ultimately we're all kind of working at this intersection of confidence and competence and decision making. And
Yeah.
when we could bring those things together in the most efficacious way is where we have the chance to push this entire generation of girls forward in a way that the world so desperately needs right now.
And you talked a little bit about this, kind of talking about, having someone come in to talk to the students. Obviously this is mentor month. And so I'd love to hear about, like what are some examples or some strategies around mentoring that you have used, with your program in schools, et cetera.
Yeah, and we kind of think of mentoring in two different ways. One as career role modeling, and one as a more traditional mentor that has a longer term engagement and relationship. Our program, they get that longer term relationship engagement from their program facilitator. So that person is a school counselor, an educator, a social worker, but they get that career role model opportunity through women like many who are on this call, who go into their local rocks programs and speak about their careers, or bring the girls to their company to show them around, or join virtually from wherever they are in the country, which has been one of the happy outcomes of a really hard time for our world, is that now being zooming somebody in from anywhere gives girls this opening to a whole new opportunity and access point that they didn't have before. And so I think that mentors can play two different roles. One, to be that, hey, look at me, I'm doing this. Here was my path to get here. Here's some of the challenges that I faced along the way. Here's some of the challenges that I continue to face, because we can't paint a picture that it was all so easy breezy and I made it and you can make it
Yeah.
too. We have to be very honest, I think, with girls about, hey, I'm one of the few, and here's the challenges from the first class I walked into at college where there were two girls, to the board meeting that I walked into and everyone left and went to the bathroom and I was like, hey, what's going on here? To, so
Yep.
to not scare them, but to rather prepare them for how to manage and handle those non-academic, non-work related, but social elements that they're likely to face, being one of a few.
Yeah, and I mean, I think back to talking about one of two. I was one of two girls in my chemical engineering course, et cetera, and just knew that. Of course, my dad was an engineer, so I'm a good Indian daughter. I became an engineer. But just really understanding that and what challenges were ahead of you or were not always easy. My first job, which was many years ago, I was told I couldn't go out to the job site because it was in the South, and they were like, no one's going to accept a woman and a woman of color as an engineer in the small town. They're like, you can't go. I was just in shock, like, you can't send me. And it wasn't all that long ago. I mean, I know things are changing, but these are the things that kind of make us who we are today. And I think, to your point, we have to share that. Like, these are the challenges we face. Some things are different now. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and move over to talk to Mecca for a few minutes, and then I'm going to have you both back for some Q&A toward the remaining part of our webinar today. But I told you today, these are two rock stars, and you already heard from one of them. And now will be your chance to hear from Mecca, who is with the Department of Ed and really moving and shaking things there to make really equity and diversity forefront with what we're doing with women and girls in STEM for sure. So, just starting off, Mecca, tell us a little bit about what are some of those efforts that you're working on in the department is to ensure equal access, because that is a big piece of this too, as Lisa talked about, some of the underserved schools versus some of the, more affluent. And but what do you see as some of the solutions and some of the efforts that you guys are doing to address that?
Well, I really love this question. Thank you. Because I just want to start by saying the actual mission of the Department of Education is to promote student achievement and prepare students to be competitive across the globe. And it's through fostering educational excellence and equal access. So when I read this question, I thought, okay, this is actually really baked into the DNA of why the whole Department of Ed exists. And I'll just take a moment just to talk a little bit about our initiative, You Belong in STEM, and we're really proud of that. We know that a big piece of the access puzzle is exposure and making sure, just as Lisa was sharing, that like girls can really see themselves in spaces and can really envision themselves thriving in spaces that they may not have known about. And so we therefore do place a really big emphasis on belonging. There's a ton of research that shows that it's kind of the inverse of what you were saying, Sheila. Like I think you said we say that you have to see it to believe it. Like you can't be what you haven't seen, I think is something that you said. So we
Yep.
also very much believe in kind of that mantra. We want girls to see themselves in STEM, full stop.
Yes.
And so because of that, we follow the science of learning and development. So that's like a kind of a conglomeration of research from neuroscience, psychology, kind of learning and development among children. And it's all about how to create the right learning conditions for students, because it's not just about like kind of giving them all of these careers or ideas or propositions and then saying go. Like we also need to make sure that we are setting them up so that they can really take in this information in a developmentally appropriate way. And make sure that they're in an atmosphere that feels like welcoming and inclusive and warm and positive, such that they can again like take the risks that we know they'll need to take in order to potentially fail on their way towards success. So just a little bit about like why belonging is so important to us, and we are thinking a lot about like the mental and emotional supports that need to be in place as well, as we think about ways that we can support kind of the full development of our children. Our three goals within our particular You Belong in STEM initiative are: one, ensuring that students are excelling in rigorous, relevant, and joyful STEM learning. And I did hear, again, Lisa, the two of you are talking about joyful learning. And so I just appreciate that. Like the rigor is important, but we do want to ensure that our young people are enjoying what they're doing. It's got to feel really relevant to them. We're also not going to persist. We also talk a lot about STEM education field. Like we want to bring in more educators. We want to make sure that they are growing in the field, that they are staying in the field. Like we are, as many of you I'm sure are very familiar, like experiencing an educator crisis across the country. And one of the sub areas, of course, is in STEM, where this is like really stark. And so it's important to us that we are getting people who look like our young people into the classrooms again. So they are we're really thinking critically about what those pipelines are going to look like. And then, of course, investing in STEM education. So that looks like using federal dollars. A lot of our kind of COVID relief money is running out at the end of this calendar year, using dollars at the state level, and also, of course, local funds to make sure that STEM education is a priority. So one thing that we've done through this particular initiative is ask organizations to make commitments. When we think about what the work is that they're doing, and even how specifically they would serve women and girls, and how they would serve students of color, because those are two historically underrepresented groups in this particular field. So we're really curious because our message is, these are priority areas and priority demographics for us. We want to think about folks who have been kind of traditionally underrepresented in STEM and want to sort of make a point and learn how organizations are planning to address that. So we did receive, hundreds of commitments from organizations. It was really promising, and we're now about like the year or so mark. So we're in process of getting updates from folks about what they've been doing in order to like celebrate, advocate, and further their missions. And so we're excited to share more about that during our next convening, which is going to happen in the spring. But it's been really fascinating and really illuminating to learn about the ways that many organizations, particularly really small local ones that see issues like within their communities, are thinking very strategically about ways that they can really celebrate girls and young women, and really encourage them to thrive within their STEM fields.
Yeah, and I think, you talked about this and Lisa mentioned it too. I think also just making it much more relevant for kids is a key component of this, which is why, like in Learning Blade, we have storylines that are societal challenges because, again, we want to show kids how, being in a construction job and building a orphanage in Haiti after an earthquake can really be inspiring for students. And then they learn about the careers and things like that as you talked about, and I think, as we're thinking about what are the things we can do, and I was very fortunate to be part of the You Belong in STEM launch when you guys did that a little over a year ago. And, that's the first time really the department has taken such a strong kind of step in the direction of STEM. We all know it's important. We know there are great jobs out there. One of the things that Million Mentors, our data showed us that while women, there are less women that go into STEM, in the first 10 years, 50% of the women that go into STEM drop out of their STEM job. Now, no one knows exactly. There are multiple reasons. There's no one particular reason for that, but it's so important the work that you and Lisa are doing to make sure we're filling that pipeline and, making sure that we're getting that. What do you feel are the role of maybe some other things that we haven't heard, like extracurricular activities or clubs and things like that in the STEM subjects? Like, I think Jenny Kopak's on from Science Olympiad, a great organization that does amazing work in this space. What are some of the examples of things that you've seen that have been successful in that arena?
But to your point, there are lots of organizations that are doing great work, many that are specific to sub areas, coding, mathematics, medicine, that sort of thing. A lot of national orgs that have, local affiliates, et cetera. I think that what's helpful for me to speak to rather than calling out specific orgs, because there's so many, I don't want
Yeah,
people to feel like I've got favorites or
understand.
that I'm not highlighting
We
orgs that are
like
doing
them all. We
really,
like them all.
right, really great important work. There's a role for everyone. I think I could speak more to like how to bring some of that work to your space, to your local school or community if you're looking for it, if you're not sure, and if it's something like I have, a daughter or a child who might be interested in this work, and I'm interested in how to get them involved in it, like where do I go? We know that and again, we have a lot of research that shows that like high quality programs can just lead to better outcomes. So we're talking about attendance, academic outcomes, again, like social emotional outcomes in terms of like students feeling really focused and using different parts of their brain. And so we very much are advocates of like the out of school time programming that could look like before school programs or after school programs or programs outside of the school year, like during the summer. And of course, right now is a really great time to really be on the lookout for those summer programs. And so I think that one of the things that is kind of needed is you do need an enterprising leader. Now, I don't think that the role matters as much. So it could be a teacher or staff member, but it could also be like a family member, but someone who is going to kind of take the lead and think, all right, what is the legwork that I need to do to kind of understand a bit about the landscape? I wish there was just one, you know, like platform that we could all go to and like see all the different opportunities that were listed across the country, and you could really filter for every, I mean, that would be like my total dream.
Idea for some entrepreneur out there.
Right, please make it happen. So you could really help out all the parents out there for sure. But I do think that and for the one thing I will say about parents and guardians, speaking personally as someone who's led like a family and community engagement team at a network of schools before, I do think that parents really underestimate their power in this space. I've had the opportunity to travel with the deputy secretary to a number of schools across the country where we've, in particular, schools where we've seen, great work happening in STEM. She'll ask the students directly, like, how did you find out about this school? Like, if it's a STEM specific school, it's not something that you would just kind of know necessarily. And every single time the child says, actually their answer is my mom. So they always say like it was my parent, like my mom or my parent, did the research and found out about this school and like enrolled me, and I love it, and it's been completely life-changing. That is, we do not like plant that answer. That's just the response. So just saying that again, please do not overestimate or underestimate the power of parents who know their children best and like what type of programs to send them to. But I think some of the questions to ask, and again, this could be someone who's at the school site, or it could be a concerned parent or guardian. It could be someone who's looking to form, more connections within schools or districts and in their community, is to ask first, like, what are the programs that already exist, and for which students? So oftentimes we'll find, especially now, like as we're coming out of this kind of COVID response and recovery time, a lot of schools and districts opted to use a lot of their federal relief funds to like expand programs or create new ones. And so sometimes there may be you may not know about a program because it might be for like the younger grades or the older grades, and perhaps it's an option of expanding it or asking if there are programs that could expand to earlier or later grades. I think there's another question around like, what are the just kind of total sum of organizations that we're currently partnering with? Because those orgs, if you ask to be connected to them, they know who their peer organizations are. So even if it's like a literacy organization, like they're probably familiar with, again, like their counterparts in math or science or et cetera. So I think just like asking about like, who else can you connect me to who would be someone in this space that would know more information than I do, is a really great way to think about that. And then just ask to be connected to those point people, either someone who's at the school, who'd be forming those kind of strategic partnerships, or at the district even. Like if you're able to get to the district level, and nearly every district has some sort of family and community engagement team or team that works on strategic partnerships and initiatives, like they would be able to talk to you if you don't know about anything that's happening at your particular school, but something that's happening across the district. And so it might just be again a matter of trying to kind of run down the traps there about learning about what other opportunities exist within the realm of your community that may not have come to your specific space and your specific sphere. And so I think that figuring out what currently exists in your home school or community is really key. And then the other thing I would just say briefly, again, if it's like school-based staff, this is where I would start talking about the National Partnership for Student Success really briefly. So I would just highly recommend learning more about that particular initiative. NPSS, or the National Partnership for Student Success, it's a public-private partnership between the Department of Ed, AmeriCorps, and the Johns Hopkins University, because that's where the hub is situated. And it's basically, its purpose is to create like this collaborative community between schools, districts, states, philanthropic organizations, universities, and it's to provide technical assistance and increase what we call people-powered supports as needed. So we've had a number of schools in the wake of the pandemic that have said, like, we need more people in our schools to support our students. Like, we are recognizing that these needs are coming up greatly, and that again crosses the gamut in terms of, yes, STEM, but also social emotional support, et cetera. And so a couple years ago, the president actually set a goal of adding an additional 250,000 individuals into these student support roles. And those include like tutors, those include student success coaches, post-secondary, transition coaches, wraparound support coordinators, and of course, mentors. And so, the NPSS just really engages this broad coalition of organizations from the local to the national level, and youth serving organizations, provide some funding when necessary to make sure that groups can get together to collaborate and really make plans and support with capacity at the local level. And they offer technical assistance at everyone's favorite cost, which is free. And so I just really want to highlight that, because if you're at school staff, if you work at the state level or even at university level, like there are ways that it's important for us to think about what this collaborative work looks like the challenges that we're describing about in STEM facing young women and girls, these are interconnected with other systems. And so it's just important that we're getting lots of people kind of in on this, that we're thinking about ways that we can infuse more people into our schools to show them more love and support.
Yeah, great. And I mean, I think you talked a little bit about it, but definitely we need to also think about our businesses and our corporate partners, how they can lean into helping within the schools, et cetera. In fact, we're working right now with the Millie Mentors team, but also with the BP and Infosys, who actually are sending mentors into schools in the Houston, Texas area to actually mentor young girls. And so, that's another really great way for employers to get involved with their schools, because a lot of times, employers are like, what can we do to help? And most of the time it's money. They just keep talking about money, but there's really time that's tremendously valuable. And again, it gives the opportunity for individuals to see what it looks like for them to perceive themselves in these roles. And definitely finding women that can mentor is really powerful, but we need all hands on deck. So, making sure that we get mentors into the school, as you mentioned, Mecca, is a really important thing. And I think somebody asked about the National Partnership for Student Success, and we're going to have information on this toward the end of the call. And I did see pop up Heather Sherman from Battelle STEM X, which is another great organization that we collaborate with, that's really involved in helping really at the policy level in so many states, and at the grassroots level as well, trying to advocate for STEM and computer science careers and things like that for our youngsters. So, just like you mentioned, there's so many groups, we can get in trouble. I probably will for not mentioning all of them, but there are some that really have a lot of collaboration in what they do. And I think that's what you talked about, Mecca. It's like collaborating. We don't have to be all things to everybody. So specifically, just quickly, how is the department like working on addressing the gender sort of stereotypes as well when we're looking at this as well?
Sure. So one of the things we're doing is really trying to develop those public-private partnerships. So thank you for starting off that part of the conversation. We really want to kind of amplify our reach and impact from pre-K all the way to higher education, thinking about how we can increase awareness around STEM learning, STEM opportunities and outcomes, et cetera. So we do have a partnership with NASA. I could say them because there's only one NASA and everybody knows what that means.
Yeah.
And that's a federal
And
agency.
they're all part of the government, so it's fine.
Right. But we're working to identify opportunities to support traditionally underserved and underrepresented folks in STEM. So we're excited about that. And then we actually just started an internship with a couple of organizations, Women in Aerospace and also American Institute of Aeronautics. And so they were collaborating on a campaign around space careers. And I'm really excited about that personally because with the Artemis missions coming up,
Yep.
NASA will land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon. And I'd also really like the idea of expanding the definition of space careers. You were talking again a little bit about this with the previous conversation, but I think when some people think space, they think astronaut, but there are so many other ways that you can be involved in a space career that has nothing to do with actually, getting yourself into a suit and shooting yourself up to the moon. And that could include everything from like culinary skills to engineering skills, et cetera. And so we're just really excited to kind of start to embark on that campaign. I think that one of the biggest leverage points that we have at the department is really elevating bright spots. So we've been, we go on these tours. Our priorities here at the Department of Ed are under the umbrella of called Raise the Bar. So we talk a lot about how we know what needs to be done. And it's our job to raise the bar in education across this country. And there are a few different ways that we look and highlight schools and districts and communities that are doing that. And so we're looking to make sure that we're elevating effective and scalable STEM practices. So when we are visiting different communities, we can say like, these are ways that you've really been able to raise the bar, and that looks like ensuring that there's academic excellence, that looks like providing pathways for students, that looks like things like promoting multilingualism, looks like promoting a rigorous and relevant education, which of course includes STEM. And so when we're able to go into these school settings and communities, like we're talking with elected officials, we're able to highlight the work that's happening within community. And so that just, of course, gives a boost to that particular space, but also provides an example, because people are always looking to learn more about like, well, what does this look like in a rural setting or an urban setting or a suburban setting? And, what does this look like in a single gender site school, et cetera? And so one of the things that my particular team is doing is like looking for examples of in spaces where we can go, and we're open to invitations if people would like to do that, and invite some representatives from the Department of Ed to come and highlight and see the work that's happening. And so I can also put some of that in the chat as well, just to at the end. So then the last thing I'll say is that Ed is working with the White House on our national strategy on gender equity and equality. And so that's around like encouraging STEM innovation and entrepreneurship honestly through a lot of like international science and technology collaborations. And I've actually personally had the opportunity to host conversations with representatives from folks from like the Democratic Republic of Congo, from Thailand, and even from Lithuania. And so these are conversations I never thought that I'd be a part of, but they all wanted to talk about girls in STEM. And those are questions that they brought up, but they're interested in learning about, like the American ideals of gender equality, and kind of, I would just say that like this question of improving gender equity really transcends like physical and cultural bounds. It's something that people are thinking about globally. And so we are thinking about how we can continue to engage in the global STEM community as well.
Yeah, and you talked about space. There's also the Blue Forge, and the DoD is working on strategies to get more workers to build submarines, because that is apparently a big need as well. And so, just the more we can amplify and get those messages out there, it's going to be great. So I know we're running up against our time, so I just want to like invite Lisa back. And I just love to kind of have a little more personal part at the end, just to so people can get to know you. You guys aren't all just book smart. You're also very capable and fun women too. So, maybe both of you can share like who inspires you right now and why, and share a little bit about that. So Lisa, love to hear from you on that.
I'll just get real personal. I've been doing this work focused on girls for going on 15, 17 years. The initial research behind ROC started in 2006 as my first year on the faculty at Ohio State that year, or my second year. And even before that, my work was just so centered around supporting girls and working towards a more just and equitable future for them. And I had girls in my life, but I didn't have any kids until COVID. And I had a daughter in July of 2020, so she's now 3. And when I think about the work up until that point, it had been for everybody else's daughter, for every other girl, and you really don't think you can get more passionate about something that is so core to you, and then you can. And you realize that you could intellectualize this work, and you could theorize, and you can research, and you could, bring it all in that makes sense. But then when it becomes so meaningful in a way of what her life and options are going to be, and I just never had the chance to know what that felt like until recently. And so it just really helps you dig deep into the work that what you want for yourself, what you want for every other girl and woman, but what you want for those ones who are closest to you. It's
That's
pretty
very,
motivating.
yeah, that's very cool, and kind of a great way that you found even to dig deeper than what you thought you could. So very cool. Mecca, how about you?
Sure, I can talk a little bit. My great aunt, she's passed, but this is my dad's aunt. She was to my knowledge, the first. She was an educator, and one of the first educators in our family. Was the first Black educator in her religious school in Louisville, Kentucky. And so I just think about, the challenges of being the first anything in new spaces, and what that's like, and the pressures to succeed. And I think that she taught me a lot of the ideals that I carry with me, which is, first about the importance of education, and the importance of providing educational spaces for others as well. The importance of saving money so that you have some pennies for a rainy day when things,
Yep.
change. And especially as women, the importance of making sure that that's something that we've got, that we have our own money together. and then also about creating a welcoming environment, you know, and so I just try to take those ideals with me in the small and the large interactions that I create. Like I want to be known as someone who creates
Yeah.
spaces where people feel welcome, where people, you know, feel like it's a space where they can learn and fail, and it's fine because we're all here on this journey to be better people. And just thinking about how important it is to, you know, stand in kind of the firstness, if that is something that you are doing, or if not, then like your uniqueness and the unique parts of you that you bring into the space. And so I just kind of try to stand tall on that and on her legacy.
Yeah, I mean, I love to share myself too. My mom is definitely the woman that inspired me the most. She came by herself in 1956 from India, which at that time on a boat. So at that time, no women were coming to the US. And can you imagine now, like we can call our kids, we know where they are. Like they had to book a call. They couldn't, she'd had to write a letter to her parents. And, you know, it's just hard to even imagine a day that was like that. And think about, you know, how it was when she was the only one wearing a sari and walking around in town, and people would give her money because they thought she couldn't afford clothes. And so, you know, like those kind of women, like your aunt, et cetera, have blazed the really the trail for us that we get to follow on, and we have to make it better for Lisa's daughter and other daughters that are coming behind us. So just, you know, again, Lisa, can you share what is your vision of what does life look like for women when we look at like 2100, which we probably won't be, I won't be here for sure. I'm not sure any of us will be, but what do you see as the future, you know, and the impact of the work you're doing, and how do you hope that it'll change
Yeah,
what
you
girls
know,
have?
and I don't want to end on a negative note by any means, but I will say I'm a little nervous when I look at our data from 2017 and then the data from 2023 on how girls are perceiving their worlds and their opportunities and their confidence. We're not going in the right direction there. And it's particularly concerning for the youngest girls. The 5th and 6th graders experience the biggest declines in across the data set. And and that was just in 5-6 years time, which
Mm.
granted there's a lot that's happened in the world in the last 5 to 6 years. But if we don't put our attention and meaningful resources and vigorous intervention, we're not going to stop this, let alone turn it around and move in the other direction. And so while I think it's, you know, great to say, but look at all the strides we're making, and we're breaking in and we're breaking barriers, which yes, we are, but overwhelmingly it's not fast enough, right? And I think that right now girls can't afford for us to take our time. And
Yeah.
so I think this is a call to action that we have to keep doing what we're doing and more. Because if we want the youngest girls to have all of the world of opportunity ahead of us, we have to recognize that even in the last 5 and 6 years, they're not feeling that. They're
Yeah.
no further ahead.
And
And
don't you think it's social media though? I feel like social media has
oh, that's
changed.
a whole other webinar.
Yeah, I know. We can't discuss it now, but I just feel like when I hear that, it just makes me so mad because people just put all their positive on social media. So every girl that has a bad day looks at that and sees, and kids, anybody,
Oh yeah,
adult.
there's a complexity around social
Yeah,
media that
yeah,
is truly another whole webinar, but really is influencing the youngest girls amongst us.
yeah, yeah. Mecca, just a question for you that came up. I want to make sure I got that. Is there a toolkit of some kind for You Belong in STEM? I know you're going to talk about your the partnership, but is there a toolkit for You Belong in STEM that's available?
A toolkit is actually in process, and we are really
Okay,
excited
very
about that,
good.
and it's going to be unveiled this spring.
Okay, there we go. See, somebody was clairvoyant on here. They already thought about it. So that's great. But like for you too, like you're looking at the future and you guys are really making some strides at the Department of Ed. What do you feel it will look like outside of Lisa's? Yes, we're worried, but how do we do better? to get our girls there.
Yeah, there are definitely some parts of what Lisa said that I really agree with. I think that, overall, school still looks the same as it did when we were really based on the agrarian calendar. And so I
Yeah,
think that we do need to push further faster. I mean, technology is moving at a rate that's just incredible. Like the phones from last year are no longer, like up to code or whatever. So I know that I'm constantly grappling with my phone because like it's out of date and I just bought it what feels like mere months ago. So what I mean by that is like we do need disruptors. We need change makers. We need people who are going to really push the envelope for what learning looks like. And we need to continue to like share those examples with people so they can see it can be done. Just like we're talking about children who need to see it to believe it, adults often need that too, because often what we do is we hold back or we're a little scared of change, right? Like change means that there's going to be some sort of loss, and that could mean a loss of your job or your money or your status or whatever it is. And so we need folks to be able to share and say, like, we have done the thing that you're all trying to do. This is what it looks like. It's possible, to give people a little bit of hope and inspiration so we can start to replicate that. And so there's definitely a role that like all of us can play in that, whether it's Department of Ed and elevating and sharing those stories and pushing for people to continue to push the envelope on innovation, but also folks who are running businesses and working at organizations that have the opportunity to really dig into the local level and figure out like what is the big problem here that would make the most change, and really starting to chip away at that.
yeah. And
And
education, I say this and people don't disagree. It's one of those things we keep doing it the same way and expecting different results, right? You
it's the
talked about
definition of insanity,
yeah,
right?
so I mean, that is something, and obviously we have two change makers here, and hopefully even I'm one too, but I think we're really trying to change. And with Million Women Mentors and the work we've done across the country, I feel like we elevated when we started Million Mentors 10 years ago with Edie Frazier as the leader, et cetera. We really didn't see any group out there that was focused completely on women and girls in STEM. Now there's many, many, many organizations that do that, and particularly as it related to mentoring specifically. And so, while we cannot say we've done all the work, we have not. It's been a collaborative effort, but I think we elevated the conversation, and having, conversations like we're having today are part of that. I did want to wrap up. I love to be on time because give everybody their time as we do. We're punctual people. But I'd love for each of you to do your call to action. I know we have a slide in there, Kylie, that we can put up. And I do want to give a shout out to Kylie Ann, who none of this would be possible without our tech genius behind us. Kylie, she does an amazing job putting together for us. But I'm going to let each of you take a minute and just, what is your call to action? What would you like to see from people and want them to get involved with you? Happy to, again, just thank you guys so much for being here. And thank you to everyone who joined in as well. Hope you heard something today that you can also get involved in. So Lisa, why don't you start? And Mecca, I know yours on the screen, but Lisa, go ahead.
Sure. Earlier in the chat, I shared a link to be able to download the Girls Index research report. And that would be the starting place for my ask for you, is to take a peek at that research and see what's compelling to you, and take that back to the people who are working with girls in your life and to the girls in your life. And simply pull out a stat and say like, hey, I just saw this recently. What's that feel like to you? Use it as a neutral starting point to engage the girls in your world in the conversation about the concepts of confidence and leadership and social media and relationships and school. Because what we find is allows us to get insights into the girls that we care most about. I think the other thing that I would ask is if you have an interest in being on our list for when the Girls in STEM report does launch, which will be later in 2024, please reach out to me personally or to Rox on social media, because we really want partners in the activation and dissemination of the Girls in STEM report. And we'll make sure to share the previous report with you so you kind of know what we're looking to position here later in the year.
Great. And Mecca, how about wrapping it up?
Sure. So I would just say that the first email is for STEM. And so just please let us know what your, where you think we should go next. Like, sharing is caring, and we want to know the work that's worth elevating. This is one of the best ways that we can, drum up support. We could potentially get press. We could, potentially send folks in the department there. So if you know of leaders within your organization, leaders within your organizations or leaders of other orgs that are doing great work in the STEM space that's really mission aligned to the conversation we were having today, like, we'd love to learn about that work. And you could just send a very quick informal email, like, I heard about you on the webinar today and like want to give you more information, like follow up. And we have real people with real lives who are tracking that. And then for the National Partnership for Student Success, just my ask there is, like, we're eager to provide free technical assistance and make connections as needed, whether again you're at the state level, local level, a nonprofit potential partner, a for-profit partner, or university, et cetera. So please feel free to explore the website, which is listed there, and request TA as needed. And I just wanted to say thank you to Sheila and Ted for the invitation. This was wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for being there. And also, we will make sure that all those links and things will be available in the recording that will be sent out to everyone who has joined. And I did put my own personal email, into the chat as well. Love to hear from any of you that want to get involved with Million Mentors or Learning Way. Thank you, Mekka. Lisa, the hour just flew by. I knew it would. And you guys gave us so much to think about, and appreciate you spending the time with us. And thanks to all that joined. Thanks to Ted, the STEM Connector team, Kylie, Joe, everybody. And great to see many of my friends that are on here as well. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, and go out there and do something, helping girls in STEM. Thanks, guys.